So as we introduce this next segment, college students across the country, including right here in New York City, are protesting the war in Gaza. Now, regardless of where you stand on the issue, chances are you likely don't have a clear understanding of what anti-Semitism is. And that is where our next guests come in.
Emmanuel Acho is the New York Times best-selling author of the book Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man and the host/producer of the Emmy-winning series of the same name. Noah Tishby is a New York Times best-selling author of Israel, a simple guide to the most misunderstood country on earth, and also an activist.
Together, they wrote the book, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew. Noah Tishby, Emmanuel Acho, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Real light and frothy, right?
This is how go deep or go home.
I
like that.
That is exactly right, because I think at the crux of all of this is conversation and understanding. And so we mentioned the war in Gaza just to frame all of this, but this is not a conversation about that. This is a conversation about verbiage, understanding. And so I want to start with you, Emmanuel, if that's okay. Is it correct that you had thought up the idea of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew a year ago?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I struggled with what you mentioned while you were introducing the topic. What is anti-Semitism? You can't have empathy for someone if you don't understand that someone, if you're not educated on that someone. And so as I was trying to navigate anti-Semitism, I was like, well, is it racism? And Noah was like, it's not that simple. Because it's not just looking down at someone, it's also looking up at a Jew, along with looking down at a Jew, implying that Jews have some sort of power control behind the scenes, manipulating and monopolizing society. So I wanted to pen the book because I wanted to first and foremost understand what's breaking my Jewish brothers and sisters' hearts so that I could better serve, better love, and better walk alongside them in society.
Wow.
Which is an extraordinary thing if you think about it, because
huge.
At the time, not a lot of people from outside the Jewish community knew that there's an issue with anti-Semitism. So everybody within the Jewish community knew that there's something brewing underneath the surface, and we saw everything that was going on. And then Emmanuel reached out and basically said, I want your community to know that a relief is on the way. And I started crying. And said, yes, I'll do whatever you want.
So your immediate reaction was, yes, sign me up.
Absolutely.
When do we start?
Absolutely. And we started working on it, and we were halfway through the book when October 7th happened. And then from a book who was timely and important, it became a book that became a matter of life and death and urgency. And we put pedal to the metal and really stepped on it to make sure that the book comes out as quickly as possible. But the conversation started before, and I think this is something that we don't do in society enough. Sit down and talk. With a cunning use of facts, try to understand what's going on and be empathetic to the other side, whatever that other side is.
Imagine that, just the single act of being curious and listening and communicating. So you mentioned this, that you there was no real vocabulary or term for anti-Semitism, and I wonder if you could, in your words, tell us in the simplest way, what is exactly anti-Semitism?
So it's so the thing about anti-Semitism is this: it is not as simple as racism. When you're racist towards somebody, you usually think that you're better than that person. Oh, I'm like that race or that ethnicity, or I'm better than them, right? When you're anti-Semitic, you also think that some people are better than you. So you have this concept of the Jews control the money, the Jews control Hollywood, the Jews clearly control this and this and that. Now, I've personally been looking for that cabal and that control. I can't find it. That's when you move into anti-Semitism, when you attribute to the Jewish community mythological powers that they don't have. There is a definition out there called the IRA definition, which was just passed in Congress. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, which is a great framework from which you can understand what anti-Semitism is. But again, Emmanuel, from outside the Jewish community, was actually curious about these things, and this couldn't have come in a better timing.
Because there was a lot of tension, Alex. There was a lot of tension. I didn't fully agree with everything Noah said, and we talked about that tension in the book. I mentioned I was drafted to the Cleveland Browns in 2012. My owner was a Jewish man. I was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. My owner was a Jewish man. The general manager was a Jewish man. My first television agent was a Jewish woman. My next agent, a Jewish man. So I said, how can you say it's anti-Semitic to identify the power that Jewish people hold in society? Like, when you say that, I feel like you're gaslighting me. And so in the book, we talk through that tension and we just try to understand it all.
Well, you bring up another good point, because yes, we need to have, we all need to sit down and we need to chat like adults, because everybody's different and everybody's coming to the table from a different place. And so I'd imagine there was a little bit of a microcosm of that going on when you two sat down and wrote this book together. So what are some uncomfortable truths or some uncomfortable conversations that you can share with us that you had while this process was happening?
There were so many, so many. We talked about everything from are Jews white? Did the Jews kill Jesus?
Is it okay to say Jew or Jewish?
So the very first title of the book was not Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew. That was not the title. I wanted to call it Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jewish Person.
And I was like, no. Let's not beat around the bush here. You don't need to say a Jewish person because there's nothing insulting with saying a Jew. I'm a Jew and I'm proud. And there's nothing wrong with it. The problem is with what has society kind of attributed to that word. We've been using that word as a cuss word for thousands of years. What's wrong with being a Jew?
And I'll say quickly, the most uncomfortable thing occurred, chapter 16 of the book. It's called How the Book Almost Didn't Happen. Noah and I didn't speak for 3 weeks. We had a vehement disagreement after October 7th, so sharp that we didn't talk for 3 weeks and the book fell apart. But thankfully, we realized that we can communicate better together this message to the masses. So we put our differences aside. We still found grace, we found truth, we found love, and we moved forward with it.
Well, isn't that just a beautiful
Well,
metaphor?
but also I think it speaks volumes to the fact that you are both intelligent, you both listened, you knew well enough to walk away, cool off, and come back, which I think is a valuable lesson whether you're having an uncomfortable conversation with your colleague, with someone of a different race, or the guy at the bodega.
Yes.
Who took your
And that's when relationships actually become deeper and more meaningful. We all have family members that you get into a fight with, and then you make up. And that's what happens.
Still drawing that one. but
So,
yes.
to that extent, have either of you from your own separate communities received any sort of pushback?
That's all.
They laugh. Right?
I mean, well,
bet.
I receive a ton of that, but in large part because we try in America to project our Western ideologies onto thousands of years of nuance. And so in America, we simplify it to black and white because that's so often how we see the world as black and white. Jewish people are white. And in America, there is so much tension between the black community and the Jewish community. There has been, obviously, since the inception. As a result, when people see me sitting down with a woman that they perceive to be white, I'm sitting down with the man, I'm sitting down with the colonizer, I'm sitting down with the oppressor, I'm sitting down with this, that, and the third, not acknowledging the fact that Jewish people don't identify as white, they identify as Jewish. And there's a lot to unveil there. We unpack it all in the book.
Yeah, specifically with, Emmanuel was blown away when you could be Jewish and an atheist. He's like, wait, I don't get this.
Right.
I don't understand. I'm like, no, my dad did not believe in anything. And he's like, how can you be Jew? I'm like, because it's not just a religion.
It's not religion.
It's an ethno-religion.
But I'm the
it's
son
an
of a
ethnic
pastor,
group.
so to me, I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
It sounds to me like this conversation needs to continue. And I wonder, since you both are so influential individually, collectively, this is like supernova, how do you continue this conversation? Because for me, I was drawn by the title. I grew up in New York City. Jews were everywhere. I remember going down to the South. I was like, are they Jewish? Are they not Jewish? So this is a global theme, I think. How do you try to continue this conversation? And make it last?
Oh, first and foremost, I want people to understand the issues going on aren't just happening in the world, they're happening in your world. If you think that the problems in society are so far away from you that they won't impact you, then you'll just navigate very ignorantly. But ignorant is not bliss. Ignorance might be bliss to you, but it's pain to another. So realize, like, there's issues going on at colleges. The next generation's being impacted. So not only is there a war in Gaza, there's currently tension and turmoil in society at large, and it's impacting you. So the conversation could continue and should continue by understanding this is an us problem. This isn't a them problem. This is an us problem.
And everything that's happening on college campuses right now comes from lack of education. These college kids, first of all, there are a lot of outside educators that are messing things up, and I encourage people to look into that as well. But also what the college kids are asking for, stop demanding Israel to ceasefire. Who are you? Israel's been trying. Hamas doesn't want ceasefire. So there's a lack of understanding and lack of education that is causing real issues in America, which is a problem. The first thing that needs to be done is sit down and talk to people that don't look like you and don't come from the same background as you.
The beginning and the end of it.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Noah, Tishby, Emmanuel, Acho, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.